Imagine waking up one morning and finding something impossible on your wrist, something that shouldn't be there, something that nobody else can explain, no matter how many doctors you visit or how many specialists you see. A red thread, thin as a hair, impossibly vivid in color, wrapped around your wrist in a perfect circle. You try to remove it, but your fingers pass right through. You cut at it with scissors, yet somehow it remains, glowing softly even in daylight. Days pass. The thread doesn't fade. Then people start asking about it. Family members catch glimpses of the red glow beneath your sleeves. Strangers on the street stare. And slowly, as more people notice, you begin to realize that this isn't just something strange happening to you. This is something that's been happening in Japan for centuries. This is the red thread curse. In Japanese folklore, there are legends about connections that bind people together across time and space, but not all threads are meant to connect. Some threads are meant to strangle. Some threads pull you towards something you can never escape. Some threads wrap tighter and tighter until you can barely breathe. The red thread curse originated from a specific incident in Kyoto, though records from the Edo period are fragmented and unreliable. What we do know comes mostly from temple records and accounts from people who claim to have survived encounters with victims of the curse. Now, you might wonder if this is real, or if it's simply another Japanese urban legend spread through internet forums and horror manga. Here's what I can tell you. In the past 2 decades, there have been documented cases of people reporting the exact same phenomenon, the same red thread appearing on their wrist, the same inability to explain how it got there or why it won't disappear. Whether these experiences are genuine supernatural occurrences or something else entirely, that's for you to decide. But what I'm about to share with you is the documented account of one woman named Akira who experienced the curse firsthand and lived to tell about it, though living might not be the right word anymore. So settle in, because this story doesn't have the clean resolution you might expect from a typical legend. There are no neat conclusions here, just the slow, creeping horror of something you can't control and can't escape. Let me take you back to a morning in March when Akira woke up and discovered that her life was about to change forever in ways she could never have imagined. Akira was 32 years old, a graphic designer working for a mid-sized marketing firm in Kyoto. She had a comfortable apartment in the Shimogyo ward, a routine that never deviated much, and a life that was, by most standards, perfectly ordinary. She wasn't particularly spiritual or superstitious. She didn't visit temples regularly or engage with folklore beyond casual interest. She was modern, pragmatic, someone who believed in explanations and solutions. So when she woke that morning and found the red thread wound around her left wrist, her first reaction wasn't fear, it was confusion. She showered immediately, assuming some stray dye had gotten on her somehow, maybe from a new piece of clothing, maybe from accidentally touching something at work. But when she scrubbed at it under hot water for 10 minutes, the thread remained exactly as it was, not faded, not loosened, just there, perfectly intact. She tried pulling it off, gently at first, then with increasing force. Her fingers slid right through it as if it wasn't even there. She grabbed nail scissors and attempted to cut it. The scissors closed on empty air. After 20 frantic attempts, she sat on her bed staring at her wrist. The thread glowed in the morning light, a luminous red pulsing with her heartbeat. She considered calling in sick to work, but that seemed foolish. What would she say? That she had a mysterious glowing thread on her wrist that couldn't be removed? they'd think she was having some kind of breakdown. Instead, she dressed in her usual work clothes, a simple gray blouse and dark slacks, and made sure to wear a long-sleeved cardigan over everything to cover the thread. The walk to the train station took 15 minutes through the quiet morning streets of Kyoto. The city was beginning to wake up. Shopkeepers were opening their storefronts. Early commuters were heading toward the station. Everything felt normal. Everything felt like it should feel. And yet Akira couldn't shake the sensation that something fundamental had changed. The thread felt warm against her skin, like it had its own body temperature. Several times during her walk, she caught people staring at her, not at her face or her body, but at her wrist, as if they could somehow see through the layers of fabric she'd wrapped around it. An elderly woman at the convenience store seemed particularly unsettled, watching Akira's arm as she reached for a coffee. A cyclist nearly collided with someone because he was so focused on looking at her sleeve. By the time Akira reached the train station, people stared at her wrist. When she sat on the train, nobody approached her. They just stared and looked away, their expressions troubled. The 40-minute train ride gave her time to examine the thread. It was perfectly smooth, no knots, no visible beginning or end, just a circle around her wrist. She wondered when it appeared. The thread didn't hurt, but thrummed with a gentle pulse she could feel. By the time she arrived at the office, she had convinced herself she needed to see a doctor. This was some kind of medical condition, a manifestation of stress or illness that had a rational explanation. A dermatologist could look at it. A physician could run tests. Something about the thread could be understood and treated like any other problem. She scheduled an appointment at the clinic near her workplace. Dr. Tanaka had been her physician for 3 years and generally competent. When she pulled back her sleeve, he went very still. His eyes widened and his hand stopped midway. He stepped back, his professional demeanor replaced by fear. "What is that?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," Akira replied. "It appeared this morning. I can't remove it." Dr. Tanaka grabbed a tongue depressor and tried to poke the thread. The stick passed right through. He tried from different angles. The same result. The thread responded to nothing. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Tanaka admitted, his voice carrying genuine distress. He advised her to see a specialist, perhaps a neurologist, in case there was something happening in her brain that was creating a sensory hallucination. But when Akira pointed out that she could see the thread, that it was objectively visible, not just something she was imagining, his confidence faltered further. He gave her a referral and suggested she try to relax to avoid stress and to monitor the thread for any changes. He also asked her, with an odd emphasis, if she had done anything unusual recently, anything that might have angered someone, anything that might have created an enemy. The question struck Akira as strange. Why would an enemy have anything to do with a thread on her wrist? But looking at the fear in Dr. Tanaka's eyes, she realized he wasn't asking out of medical curiosity. He was asking because he knew something, or at least he suspected something he wasn't willing to say out loud. Over the next week, Akira saw 3 different specialists. A neurologist found no abnormalities in her brain scans. A dermatologist examined her wrist under a specialized microscope and declared that there was nothing there to examine, yet the thread remained visible to the naked eye, a bright red defying all explanation. A psychiatric specialist suggested stress-induced visual projection, but couldn't explain how multiple people had reported seeing the same thing in the same location on her body. Nobody had answers. Everyone had theories, and everyone, when they saw the thread, exhibited the same initial reaction of shock followed by a strange, underlying dread. By the second week, Akira had stopped trying to get medical explanations. Instead, she began searching the internet for information about red threads in Japanese folklore. What she found consumed her for hours each night, stories dating back centuries about mysterious red threads that appeared on people's wrists, accounts from temple priests describing people who had developed the condition and the various fates that had befallen them. Some people had reportedly gone mad from stress, others had experienced deaths in their families, accidents that seemed inexplicable and unavoidable. A few had apparently vanished entirely, leaving behind no trace of their existence beyond their own personal journals documenting the thread's appearance. But the common thread, so to speak, in all these accounts was a connection to someone else who shared the curse. The records suggested that the red thread didn't appear randomly. It appeared as a binding between two people, a connection that shouldn't exist but was being forced into existence by something none of the texts could adequately explain. Akira began keeping a journal of the thread's behavior. Sometimes it felt warm, sometimes ice cold. At night, she would wake in dread as the thread pulsed visibly, glowing and dimming in rhythm. She noticed technology malfunctioning around her. Her computer would freeze, internet connections dropped, phones lost service. People became increasingly uncomfortable. Her coworkers distanced themselves, avoiding her in meetings. Her neighbors stopped greeting her. Even the landlord seemed nervous and hostile. It was as if the thread itself was broadcasting a warning, keeping everyone at a distance, cutting her off from normal human connection. 3 weeks after the thread appeared, Akira received a phone call at work from a number she didn't recognize. The caller ID simply showed random characters. She almost didn't answer, but something compelled her to. When she brought the phone to her ear, there was only silence for a long moment. Then, a voice, distorted and barely human, spoke to her. "The thread connects us now," it said. "You can't remove it. You can't cut it. You can't make it disappear. You belong to this now. We both do." "Who is this?" Akira managed to ask, her voice shaking, but the line went dead. She tried calling the number back, but it was invalid. When she called her phone service provider, they had no record of any incoming call at that time. No call had even been placed through their system, yet she had clearly received a call. She had clearly heard that voice. That night, Akira barely slept. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her wrist throbbing with a pain that wasn't quite physical. At some point after midnight, she felt a pulling sensation. The thread seemed to be tugging at her, drawing her somewhere. She got out of bed and found herself walking toward her window, almost without conscious thought. Outside, the streets of Kyoto were quiet and empty. The few streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and there, on the street below her apartment, she saw a figure standing and looking up at her window. It was too dark to make out details, but she could see the unmistakable outline of a person, completely motionless, staring directly at where she stood. When she blinked, the figure was gone, but the pulling sensation in her wrist continued, stronger now, almost desperate. Days began to blur together. Akira found it harder and harder to focus at work. She was living in a constant state of heightened anxiety and dread. The thread seemed to be communicating with her through these pulling sensations, drawing her towards something she couldn't understand. She started leaving her apartment and finding herself in parts of Kyoto she didn't consciously remember traveling to. She would be at her desk working, then suddenly become aware that she was standing on a street corner miles away, with no memory of how she got there. During one of these episodes, she found herself in front of an old temple in the northern part of the city. The temple was ancient, predating most of Kyoto's modern development. It was closed to visitors, the gates locked, signs indicating it was undergoing restoration. Yet she knew, with absolute certainty, that she was supposed to be here. The thread was pulsing rapidly now, almost painfully. She climbed over the gate and made her way through the overgrown courtyard to the main hall. The doors were locked, but they opened at her touch, as if they'd been waiting for her arrival. Inside, the temple was dark and empty, filled with the smell of old wood and dust. And there, in the center of the main prayer hall, stood a woman. She was perhaps Akira's age, dressed in modern clothes that were torn and stained. Her left wrist bore an identical red thread to Akira's own. When she looked at Akira, her eyes were hollow and devoid of hope. "I've been waiting for you," the woman said in a voice like wind through empty spaces. "The thread connects us. It's been connecting us for years. We don't know why. We don't know how to stop it. But I know now that we're not the first. There are others. There's always been others. This thread, this binding, it creates a connection that transcends normal existence. We're marked now. Both of us, and more will come. I can feel it. The other end of the thread is drawing others in, creating a chain of connection that spans time and distance." The woman's name was Yuki, and she had been experiencing the thread's effects for almost a year. She told Akira her story as they sat in the darkness of that abandoned temple, how the thread had appeared on her wrist one ordinary morning, how she had gone to doctors, specialists, spiritual advisors, seeking answers, how none of them had been able to help, how she had done everything she could to track down information about the origin of the thread, trying to understand why she had been chosen. What she had discovered was fragmentary and contradictory, but it all pointed toward one disturbing conclusion. The thread wasn't appearing randomly, it was being woven intentionally by someone or something, and it wasn't just binding two people. It was creating a chain. Yuki showed Akira her journal, pages and pages of observations and sketches. She had documented 13 other people who had reported similar experiences. 13 people across Japan, all appearing to have some invisible connection to each other, all marked by the red thread. Some of them had disappeared. Their journals and online accounts simply ended. No final entries, just silence. Others had reported that the thread was growing thicker over time, becoming more visible, more tangible. And still others described a sense of being slowly erased from the world around them. Memories of them fading from other people's minds, records of their existence being mysteriously deleted, as if the thread was slowly unweaving them from reality itself. "We need to find the source," Yuki told Akira. "There has to be an origin point. Someone started this. Someone or something created the first thread, and the rest of us are just consequences. If we can find the source, maybe we can break the binding. Maybe we can set ourselves free." Together, Akira and Yuki spent the next few weeks investigating. They tracked down former victims whose journals they had found online. They visited temples and consulted with monks who specialized in curse removal. What they discovered was a pattern that dated back centuries. Every 100 years or so, reports of the red thread would appear in historical records, isolated incidents, usually only one or two people affected at a time. But in recent years, the frequency had increased dramatically. In the past decade, there had been dozens of reported cases, and unlike historical instances where victims seemed isolated and alone in their experience, the modern cases showed signs of connection. They were linked by invisible threads, literally bound together across distance and time. One of the monks they consulted, an elderly priest named Fujiwara, told them something that chilled both women to their core. "The thread isn't a curse," he said. "Not exactly. It's more like a collector. Something is gathering people, drawing them together, creating connections between them that transcend normal reality. And I don't believe it's malicious in the way you might think. I believe it's hungry. It's been hungry for a very long time, and now it's finally found a way to satisfy that hunger. It doesn't want to hurt you. It wants to incorporate you. It wants to make you part of itself." Akira asked what she could do, how she could fight against something like that. Fujiwara's response was bleak. "You can't fight it," he said. "Not directly. The only power you have is the power of your own will. You must hold on to who you are, to your identity and your sense of self, because that's what the thread wants. It wants to dissolve your individuality, to merge you with something greater than yourself. If you resist hard enough, if you hold on to yourself fiercely enough, you might be able to slow the process. But you can't stop it entirely. Nobody has been able to stop it. Eventually, everyone with the thread becomes part of something else, whether that's death or transformation or something that exists beyond our understanding, I can't say. But the thread always completes its purpose. Always. That night, Akira returned to her apartment to find changes. Her things had been moved around slightly. Nothing was missing, but nothing was in the same place she had left it. Her photographs on the wall had all been turned backward. Her computer's screensaver was cycling through images she didn't recognize. Pictures of places she had never been, streets and temples and people she had never seen. And her journal was open on her desk, to a page she didn't remember writing. But there was her handwriting, describing events that hadn't happened yet, describing them in precise detail with a certainty that came from lived experience rather than imagination. She was reading about herself standing in a specific location in the middle of the night, doing something she would rather die than do. And she knew with terrible certainty that within a few days she would be compelled to do exactly what that future journal entry described. The thread was continuing its work. It was moving her toward something, toward a purpose she couldn't resist no matter how hard she tried. She called Yuki in panic, but Yuki didn't answer. She called again, and still nothing. A text message came through from an unknown number. It simply said, "She's ours now. The next will be soon." The circle tightens. Akira fell to the floor of her apartment and wept, understanding finally and completely that Dr. Tanaka had been right to fear, that the monks had been right to suggest that nothing could stop what was happening, that she had made a terrible mistake by investigating, by trying to understand, by drawing closer to the others who carried the thread. Because in doing so, she had only strengthened the binding. She had woven the thread tighter around not just herself, but everyone she encountered. The curse was spreading. It was always spreading, and it would continue spreading through every connection she made, every person she touched, every moment she was alive. As long as the red thread remained on her wrist, she was a vector for something vast and hungry and utterly indifferent to human suffering or understanding. Whether Akira is still alive today, nobody can say for certain. Her apartment has been empty for several months. Her employer says she called in her resignation through email, but nobody can find any record of that email in their system. Her family reported her missing, but the case eventually went cold. No body was ever found. Her apartment showed no signs of struggle. It was simply abandoned, as if she had vanished between one moment and the next. But people who lived near her building reported seeing a figure in her apartment window sometimes, standing motionless for hours at a time, staring out at the street below. And some of those people say the figure seemed to have something red glowing around its wrist, though when they looked closer or tried to take photographs, the details would blur or the images would simply fail to capture what they had seen. The red thread curse remains largely unknown in Western culture, buried in Japanese forums and obscure websites, discussed mostly by people who have become obsessed with urban legends and unexplained phenomena. But in Kyoto, and increasingly in other parts of Japan, people report new cases every few months, young people waking up to find the impossible thread on their wrist, people calling hospitals and being hung up on when they try to explain their symptoms, specialists turning them away after offering no help or explanation, and all of them, without exception, eventually disappearing. Thanks for joining me tonight for this journey into one of Japan's most disturbing and documented curses. Let me know in the comments what you think is really happening to people who get the red thread. Are they being cursed by something supernatural, or are they falling victim to something far stranger that we don't yet have the language or understanding to describe?